Okay, hello everybody. I have to give the final, I wouldn't call it presentation, it's rather an announcement, so it's probably going to be quicker. And I'm here on behalf of Sabine Daimling, who was supposed to present you the development of a PCR for green coffee production. Sabine couldn't make it today. She has an emergency case with a client, and since I'm located in Berlin and I just have to cycle 3 kilometers, I'm here today. And as I said before, it's the kind of announcement I'm giving today. I will give you some information what it's all about, this PCR development and some backgrounds. And as I said before, it's not a PCR development developed by P International, but by the Sustainable Agriculture Initiative. So I don't know whether you're familiar with that initiative. I wasn't until yesterday. So I made some notes. Now I'm like Stephen Taylor, yeah? Okay, so the SAI platform, or the Sustainable Agriculture Initiative platform, was actually founded in 2002 by 3 companies. It was Nestle, Unilever, and Danone, and now it's basically grown up to 40 companies, including also some of our clients like Kraft Foods, Arla, General Mills, and Unilever. The work of the SAI is meant to be global. That's an important thing for the development of the PCR, because the PCR that's going to be development should be also globally applicable. Clearly, the strength of the SAI is to focus on issues which may be classified as pre-competitive. So we're talking about a green coffee PCR, and I not know if everybody knows what that means, because it's not meant to be that it's green in terms of environmentally green. It's just like it's a certain production stage we're talking about. So not be confused. We're not doing something to claim this is green afterwards. It's still about a PCR that tries, and this is also important, tries to establish a calculation method that is consistent and transparent. And I will come to some of these issues later if I get some slides. So that's very important. So it's a PCR, and it's also not similar as European initiatives, or very smaller scale. It's not the intended goal to produce a label. You can use that maybe afterwards to do your labeling, but it's mainly developed, or the idea of the PCR is to develop a common methodology in order to be able to do consistent claims of the carbon footprint of green coffee. So now actually I want to show something about who is P International. Unfortunately, this cannot be done at the moment. So maybe I can skip that. If you have questions about P International, we are a company having software solutions, consultant solutions in the field of environmental and sustainability. And we have offices worldwide, and we have a lot of clients, which we might see in a second. Or we might not. So if you have any questions, just come and ask me who we are. There's also, coming back to the content of the presentation, there's also a kind of common definition that is used by the members of the SIA. It's the definition of sustainable agriculture, which basically says, and maybe, no, not yet. Okay, so I have to read it to you. Sustainable agriculture is a productive, competitive, and efficient way to produce safe agricultural products, while at the same time protecting and improving the natural environment, social, economic condition of local communities. So just put it in a shorter sentence. So it's the idea of the initiative is there's consistency of the 3 issues of sustainability, and not so much about a trade-off. I'm still not getting there. So now coming from the overall SAI platform to the working groups. Actually, there are several working groups established within the platform. And what we're talking about is coffee, so there's also a working group on coffee. And the members or the founding members of these working groups is Jibo, Sara Lee, Kraft Foods, Nestle, Eli, and these are also the driving forces behind to establish product category rules for green coffee. So why I'm here is, as I said, I'm here on behalf of Sabine Daimling. And why was Sabine Daimling supposed to be here? Because she's actually a member of the working group, the technical working group, and she's doing that again on behalf of Kraft Foods. So there's a lot of on behalf here. But as I said before, this is all about an announcement, and I will come back to this later when I show you the actual setup of the program. The technical working groups are still open, so if you're interested in that issue and if you can allocate some resources and time, you're very much welcome to join the process. And PE is very happy to assist SIA to spread the information around. So, still, well, maybe I shouldn't look at maybe I shouldn't look there anymore. So really, maybe some of you are familiar with the process of PCR development. You have a kind of what they call the initial phase, and in the initial phase there was a study commissioned by the SIA platform to the, I think it was CE Delft. It was doing basically about identifying focus of existing studies. It was a kind of literature review, you would call it, and just to investigate for which kind of coffee value chain there is knowledge available, where there's good knowledge, and for other where there isn't knowledge or where there are data gaps, so on and so forth. So, and this is very important because one of the outcomes is that there's some good knowledge about monoculture coffee production, whereas there is less of a knowledge in terms of life cycle assessment study on polyculture systems. And I actually wanted to show you one slide now, giving you an idea between the difference of monoculture and intercrop or polyculture. I'm not a good painter, otherwise I would paint you a picture, so in that sense I have to skip it, so we save some time. But I think everybody can understand it. Okay. This is not
You're doing very good.
So monoculture is basically...
he refused to...
I just wonder, should we have our coffee now and then come back to...
No, I'm just...
You're nearly done, yeah.
No, that's the pain he has to go through. He refused to play guitar tonight, so that now you can see what comes back when
so it's deliberate.
Okay, thank you for being so kind.
Weiß noch nicht genau, was du tust, oder?
We have to talk about paid for being here. Okay, but coming back to the issue, so there was a study, and out of the study, there have been several knowledge gaps been identified and classified.
You did very well. Look what you all did.
And okay, that's actually...
That's good.
Give you an idea about classification of coffee production systems we are looking at in these PCR developments. And obviously it's quite easy if you have monocultures, because then you don't run into the issue of allocation, but you might run into that nasty issue of land use change. And you definitely will run into it. So, and saying that, I've already mentioned, it's also the issue of carbon sequestration. We already have the three most difficult or challenging tasks which are faced in the PCR development. I think other issues are more or less state of the art nowadays, fertilizer use and so on and so forth. You wouldn't have a lot of problems to find a consensus there, but on these issues, that's really where input is needed. And again, this is an announcement. You're very much welcome if you work in that field to join the working groups. Okay, can
Which slide do you need?
next one. Okay.
I just do it for you.
Okay, thank you. So, and as you might have noticed, there's also another name on the slide. It's the Sustainable Trade Initiative. I don't know whether you're familiar with that one. I wasn't yesterday, but today maybe on the next slide. So I prepared something. Sorry about that. And but it's very important because the Sustainable Trade Initiative organized scope and development implementation of public, private, and so on market transformation programs in 16 sectors. And one of these sectors is the coffee sector. And actually there is already a program, a strategy in place. So that's the idea, is really to connect with that program within the PCR and also bring in people from these programs into the PCR development to make it a useful tool and not just something that is whatever good for, but not really can be used for also mitigation measures. And that's an important thing. Okay, so next slide, please. So the key principles, and we heard a lot about principles and key principles and major principles today, and I think most of them are quite clear, but I will repeat a little bit of it because I think it's important. Flexibility is the first one. It is a key principle, but it's also a key challenge of the work. Because the idea is to have that PCR flexible and globally applied, and you might have seen you have quite different types of coffee production systems. So it's one of the most challenges as far as I can stand from the outside to get a good balance between having something that is globally applicable but still give you some useful information at the end of the day. So consistency in that sense is another very important principle, and it's been also a major motivation for the initiative of doing PCR, because there is not such a thing today. What is a carbon-free coffee? You can get these kind of things nowadays. You know, get all kind of claims, and nobody really knows what is it all about. So that was one of the, not just the key principles, just of the motivation to have a PCR developed here, to have a foundation, a consistent and a transparent foundation of doing calculations. Also very important in that development phase is that the SAI doesn't want to reinvent the wheel. It's basically the idea, if there's a system study, if somebody in this room has done some studies on coffee or do know some people doing work on that, it's important to bring these people in, because there's no point in redoing work that already has been done. So it will be then the task of the technical working groups to evaluate that work with respect to the key principles of these working groups. So this is just another announcement. If there's knowledge, please bring it into the working groups, don't wait. And what is also something that the SIA is really pointing out, communication is an important issue here, and there are monthly newsletters. So I will give you a link later on the presentation, and you will get the presentation where you can find further information. And this monthly newsletter will have issues on like, what is the current state of the technical working group on issues like allocation? What do they propose, where they think we need further investigation, further input? So the communication, there's a communication group, is something, if you don't have resources to allocate to work in a technical working group, you still be able to get the information and you will be able to give your comments on that. Okay, next slide. Well, I think that's what I already said before. It's a structure that you have in many other projects. You have a steering committee, and then you have your technical working groups. And as I said, at the end of the day, you also have a communication group, which is very flexible and is for people who doesn't have the resources to give a clear commitment. Because if you want to become a member of the technical working group, which is still possible, you have to really be there on a regular basis, attending phone calls and also face-to-face meetings. So, next slide, please. If somebody wants to get into the steering committee, I have to say that's too late. Okay, so coming to the project setup now. We are in phase 2 at the moment, and the technical working group just have started their work in May. There was a first face-to-face meeting in June. So as you can see, we are still in an early phase, and whatever input you think is valuable will probably be taken. I described the work of the technical working groups already. So I think we can actually, well, maybe phase 3, I would say something about that. At the end of the day, there's also intended to do some case studies, which might be interesting for some of you to think about testing the methodology once you develop it. And also there's this wonderful term called home, which I was having some trouble to understand. But what is the meaning behind this term is the SAI doesn't want to be the owner of the PCR at the end of the day. So there's still the open questions, who is the appropriate owner for this PCR, okay? So, and talking about so much about the PCR, there has been already, or the PCR development is already registered at EnvironDeck. So for your information, you can get all the necessary information if you go on that homepage. You can get also information I was just giving you. And also, what you can see that the public consultation will start in April 2013. But again, if you want to contribute, just don't wait till April, just get in on board now. So, next slide, please. Having talked so much about the process and having improvised so much, maybe some content. As I said in the beginning, areas of focus are definitely allocation when it comes to polycultural plants, and here's some first recommendation given, and the recommendation is to use economic allocation. And saying that, we all know, first of all, you have to look at what are the possible co-products you can get out of the production, is in the production chain. This is something that has been in progress at the moment, so that there will be a clear list what to take into account as co-product. And at the end of the day, talking about economic allocation, it's also, there's a lot of concerns about price variability, what prices to use, and so on and so forth. And I think this is a very crucial issue, and this is something that needs to be fixed within that process. And again, here, no solution has, no kind of fixed proposal has been given. It's still open for discussion, and so feel free to contribute. Land use change emissions, yes, they're, well, it's always fun to talk in front of some experts. If you don't know that much about the issue, no, but basically what has been decided on to start with the greenhouse gas protocol approach as a first step, which actually was done by Sabine Daimling, and it starts basically with firstly to identify whether land use change really needs to be assessed, and that's also an important question. It's not just like going crazy about, oh my god, how can I do it, but first of all just have a look, is that really affecting my business? So you can get all information on this approach in the greenhouse gas protocol. Thank you.
Sorry.
No problem. And the last issue that has been giving some focus is the issue of carbon sequestration. And here we face another kind of challenge, because there's been a lot of studies about it on a very kind of local scale level. But the problem is, how can you use these kind of studies when you want to develop a global PCR document and give recommendations to data? How you get emission factors from small projects that can be used for loads of different applications. So again, if you have solutions here, just go on the next slide, please. Send an email to Mr. Lindsay, and he will be happy to have you either as a member of the technical working group, if you can prove that you will be available for telephone conference and face-to-face meetings. If you can't prove that and you don't think you got resource from your company or from whoever, you can subscribe for the newsletter, and you're very happy to comment and to give your input, not just on all these critical issues, but maybe on other issues like system boundaries and functional unit and so on and so forth. Okay, that's it. Thank you very much.